Jair Bolsonaro, a former army captain, became one of Brazil's most talked about and controversial presidents in recent history. His rise to power was as dramatic as his time in office, capturing the attention of both supporters and critics around the world. He was known for his very strong conservative ideas and for looking back fondly at the time when the military ran the country. Bolsonaro often praised the military dictatorship that ruled Brazil from 1964 to 1985, which made him a polarizing figure from the start. For years, he was a less-known figure in Congress, mostly recognized for his outspoken and sometimes controversial statements. But he rose to power quickly in 2018, surprising many political observers. He did this by tapping into people's anger about corruption and a struggling economy. Many Brazilians were frustrated with traditional politicians and scandals that rocked the country. His time as president was marked by frequent disagreements with democratic groups, major issues with the environment, especially the Amazon rainforest, and a very divided way of dealing with COVID-19, which drew global criticism. Bolsonaro's loyal supporters saw him as someone protecting old-fashioned values and standing up to what they saw as a corrupt system. This created a powerful movement that would go on to challenge Brazil's democracy after he lost the election, leading to deep divisions in society. On September 11, 2025, Brazil's Supreme Court found Bolsonaro guilty of planning a coup to stay in power, a historic and shocking verdict. They sentenced him to over 27 years in prison, a punishment never before handed down to a former president in Brazil. This never-before-seen decision tested Brazil's ability to hold its most powerful leaders responsible and sparked intense debate across the nation. Bolsonaro's story of being an outsider fighting a corrupt elite was key to both his rise and his fall, shaping his image in the eyes of millions. When he lost the election, he claimed it was stolen, fueling anger and unrest among his followers. This set the stage for a dangerous fight that almost broke Brazil's democracy, leaving the country deeply divided and uncertain about its future. The 2022 presidential election in Brazil was more than just a contest between two political rivals. It was a fierce battle between the sitting president Jair Bolsonaro and former President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, two figures who represented completely different visions for the country's future. The campaign split Brazil into two deeply divided groups, each passionately supporting their candidate and strongly opposing the other side. Families, friends, and entire communities found themselves at odds as political tensions reached a boiling point. Throughout the campaign, Bolsonaro repeatedly questioned the reliability of Brazil's electronic voting system, insisting, without any credible evidence, that it was rigged against him. His claims fueled widespread suspicion and doubt. When Lula narrowly won the election, Bolsonaro refused to accept defeat, remaining silent and refusing to publicly concede. This silence sent the country into weeks of uncertainty and anxiety, as no one knew what would happen next. Many of his supporters saw his refusal to speak as a call to action, believing they needed to defend their leader and their version of democracy. They blocked highways, camped outside military bases, and demanded that the armed forces intervene to overturn the election results. Years of Bolsonaro's speeches and social media posts had created deep mistrust in Brazil's democratic institutions, making it easier for conspiracy theories to take hold. As a result, many of his supporters were ready to believe the election had been stolen, regardless of the facts. Official reviews and audits found no evidence of cheating, but false information and rumors spread rapidly online, fueling even more unrest and confusion. The chaos and protests that erupted after the election were not just spontaneous outbursts. They were the result of a deliberate strategy by Bolsonaro and his inner circle to undermine trust in the election process and sow doubt among the public. By constantly questioning the system, Bolsonaro not only created an excuse for his loss, but also mobilized thousands of people to challenge the official results and take to the streets. This narrative provided cover for even more serious plans that were being discussed behind closed doors, threatening the very foundation of Brazil's democracy. The plan to overturn the 2022 election was a coordinated secret plot at the very top levels of government. The plan aimed to stop Lula from becoming president by declaring a state of emergency getting rid of the Supreme Court, and cancelling the election results. The military was supposed to be given huge powers, much like what happened in Brazil's 1964 coup. Evidence showed a scary plan to kill Lula, his running mate and Supreme Court Justice Alexandre de Moraes. Documents outlining these plans were talked about inside the presidential palace. This shows how close Brazil came to being ruled by an authoritarian government. 7 of Bolsonaro's closest friends, including top military officers, were also found guilty for their parts in the plot. The evidence revealed a small, close group willing to use force to go against democracy. The plot was a clear reminder of how delicate democratic systems can be. Bolsonaro's trial was built on a lot of evidence: text messages, emails, and statements from his personal assistant, Mauro Cid. Cid's deal with the court gave a first-hand account of Bolsonaro's direct involvement in planning the coup and looking over orders to cancel the election. The testimony connected Bolsonaro to the most extreme parts of the plot, including the assassination plan. Bolsonaro's defense claimed he was being unfairly targeted, arguing he was only questioning a flawed election. The court was not convinced. 4 out of 5 judges voted to find him guilty, pointing to overwhelming evidence that Bolsonaro led the conspiracy. Justice Alexandre de Moraes, who was a target of the plot, gave a powerful statement about the dangers Brazil had faced. The verdict was a strong rejection of using force to overturn democratic election results. It set a new standard for being held accountable in Brazil's democracy. The trial happened under the watchful eye of the world, especially the United States and President Donald Trump. Trump, who was an ally of Bolsonaro, publicly demanded that the charges be dropped. He also increased pressure with harsh taxes and restrictions on Brazil. The U.S. targeted Supreme Court Justice de Moraes, claiming he stopped free speech. But many Brazilians saw this as outside interference. The restrictions backfired, gaining support for Brazil's justice system and causing a diplomatic crisis. Trump's reaction to the guilty verdict highlighted the shared ideas between the two leaders. The trial became a major point of conflict in the global fight between democracy and authoritarian populism. U.S. involvement turned a national legal battle into an international standoff. The shadow of American politics loomed large over Brazil's fight for accountability. Bolsonaro's conviction marks a pivotal and deeply significant moment for Brazil, a country whose history has been repeatedly scarred by coups and political instability. For decades, the nation struggled with the challenge of not holding powerful figures accountable for their actions. Now, for the first time, leaders who plotted a coup have been found guilty of serious crimes against the state. This verdict sends a powerful and unmistakable message. No one, not even the most influential, is above the law. Legal experts and democracy advocates across Brazil praise the decision as a major victory for democratic values and as clear proof that the country's institutions are resilient and strong, even under immense pressure. The outcome of the trial was never guaranteed, and uncertainty lingered until the very end. One judge dissented, voicing concerns about the legal process and leaving open a narrow possibility for an appeal, which could still be considered in the coming months. However, most legal experts expect the full Supreme Court to uphold the conviction, further cementing the historical significance of this case for Brazil's democracy. Justice de Moraes, who presided over the case, emphasized just how grave the threat to democracy had been and the urgent need to draw a firm line against any return to authoritarian rule. The verdict stands as a warning to all future leaders who might ever be tempted to undermine or go against the will of the people and the principles of democracy. It marks a turning point, ending the era of impunity for coup plotters in Brazil. Despite being tested, Brazil's institutions have shown they are capable of defending democracy and upholding the rule of law for future generations. Bolsonaro's conviction has left Brazil's right wing without a leader and in pieces. He was once the person who brought together a diverse conservative movement. Now, Bolsonaro's absence creates a power vacuum with no clear person to take his place. Possible leaders like Tarcísio de Freitas and Romeu Zema don't have his strong appeal and struggle to unite the base. The right is now divided, making it weaker in its ability to oppose President Lula and compete in future elections. Conservative parties face a choice: Continue the extreme talk of Bolsonarismo or move towards more moderate views? Defending Bolsonaro risks pushing away everyday voters. Abandoning him could cause a backlash from his loyal supporters. The movement must change itself or risk being politically isolated. The future of Brazil's right will be shaped by how it responds to this moment of truth. The Supreme Court's verdict has made Brazil's divisions deeper, causing huge protests on both sides. Bolsonaro supporters, dressed in national colors, said the trial was unfair political targeting and felt let down by Trump's limited support. Opponents celebrated the conviction as a win for democracy and criticized U.S. interference. Surveys show nearly 40% of Brazilians believe the prosecution was unfair, showing lasting mistrust in institutions. The verdict has not healed divisions, it has made them stronger. For many, the conviction brought relief and a feeling of justice after a long fight to defend democracy. The 27-year sentence is seen as a necessary result for Bolsonaro's attempt to go against the will of the people. The decision was a moment of strong emotion for those who believe Brazil's democratic foundations have held firm. Bolsonaro faces a long prison sentence. Appeals are likely, but there's little chance of him returning to politics. His legacy is now defined by his conviction for trying to overthrow democracy. Brazil, meanwhile, remains deeply divided. Bolsonarismo is still a strong force despite its leader's downfall. The movement's feeling of being wronged could cause continued unrest and instability. The verdict has strained relations with the U.S., and fixing the diplomatic disagreement will be a major challenge for President Lula. Brazil's democracy has come out stronger, but more aware of how fragile it is. The trial is a clear lesson in the need to protect institutions against authoritarian threats. Ultimately, the verdict confirms that in Brazil, power is decided at the ballot box, not by force.